Hey, it's Benji Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio and host of People of Distinction, the talk that gives an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. Run to our website, peopleofdistinction.org for more info, or you can always email me directly at Benji@alcoleenterprises.com. And on the line with us today, we have Dana R. Gordon. And we're going to be discussing his amazing book, Team, Training, Education, and Mentorship. That's available for purchase through Amazon as well as barnesandnoble.com. But people, if you want to gather everything that Dana has in store, well, you can do no better than heading directly to his personal site. And that's author danagordon.com. There you'll find more information on Dana himself, more information on this wonderful book, Team, as well as find the hyperlink set up to take you to the purchasing page. And make sure you check back in frequently because Dana has another book. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in the future of this interview, or at the end of today's interview. But make sure that you're circling back around and you're checking in frequently because that book is still in creation, but it's set to be released very shortly. And that one is called Lead, Leading, Empowering, and Developing. So one more time, that's author danagordon.com. And I do want to take a second and point out that Dana was brought to our network, People of Distinction, today by some of the best publishers in the business, Author Reputation Press. So if you or anyone you know have a book that they'd like moved, people, give yourself the best gift you could possibly give. Contact ARP and have their wonderful team move it for you. You can find out more information on them through authorreputationpress.com. And listen, it is an absolute pleasure to have Dana here on the line. Now, right there in the title, you have an idea of what we're discussing today, okay? There's no beating around the bush. We're talking about teamwork today, okay? Training, education, and mentorship. And I love it, okay? I'm here for it. I'm picking up what he's putting down. And I wish that a book of this magnitude was written when I was growing up, right? When I was going through my education. Because, listen, I've always been a people person, so I worked well with others. But when it came to leading, that was always one of those things when I was in school, I didn't really know how to do it, right? And I wish I had the guidance on how to do it efficiently, because I think that's the key. Sometimes you can be in a position of leading, but you're not necessarily inspiring those around you to follow your lead. And this book is really going to be catered and geared towards education, okay? It's an informative narrative, and it's meant to teach and inspire individuals how to lead and how to work together. And that is something that is so powerful, not only from an education standpoint, not only from a teenage and young adult standpoint, but people, can we just take a second and point out that there are a lot of adults that could benefit from this message as well? I mean, when we look at our current society, given this political divide, given the social unrest that we have and the division amongst each other, listen, man, there's a lot to be gained here, okay? And this is a wonderful resource for children, for teenagers, and adults. And I'm telling you, by the time we're done with today's discussion, you're going to run on over to his Amazon, Barnes & Noble pages, his personal website, and you're going to need to purchase your copy because it is that important, okay? It's that much of a valued resource. And at the end of the day, Dana is the expert. He's written it, he's done the research, and he's going to be able to articulate it much better than I ever could. So let's bring him here with us. Dana, first and foremost, welcome to People of Distinction. And thank you very much for being a guest. How are you doing today, man?
Benji, I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on it. And thank you for the kind words. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, listen, like I tell all of my clients and all of my guests that we have on our network, whenever they thank me for my introduction, I just have to respond by saying, Dana, you started it, okay, man? You laid down the foundation. It was wonderfully put. So now I just have a simple roadmap to follow. So thank you for my introduction. But like I said, I was following your lead, man. Now, I know we have a lot of information to cover pertaining to your book. But before we jump into it, Dana, let's learn a little bit more about your background. Please tell us a little bit more about yourself.
So I grew up in Columbia, South Carolina. Did the Navy ROTC, went to Georgia Tech, and electrical engineering major there. From there, through the Naval ROTC, ended up selecting flight school and going over to Pensacola and ended up flying with the Navy, flying helicopters for 20 years, my first 20 years in the Navy as a helicopter pilot. And then had the distinct pleasure and opportunity to then command an amphibious aircraft carrier with Marine contingent on board. And so I was a commanding officer of that ship as well. And so I had the proud distinction of being the captain of the ship with 3,250 sailors and Marines on the USS Iwo Jima. And was definitely the highlight of my career. And I ended up finishing up at 29 years in the Navy, and then retired about 5 years ago now, about 4.5 years ago, actually.
People, you know what I took from that? This is what he knows. When it comes to teamwork, when it comes to leading, this man eats, sleeps, and breathes this stuff, okay? He knows this better than most. So the information found within the confines of this narrative is coming from a very knowledgeable place. So this is fantastic. And before we move forward, Dan, I do want to say thank you very much for your service. I feel like it's never enough to just say thank you. Unfortunately, that's all I have to offer at the moment. But thank you again for all the sacrifices that you and all of your military brothers and sisters have sacrificed in really protecting our liberties here in the States, man. We're truly indebted.
Benji, I appreciate that. And obviously, every time someone says that, I go back to them and say thank you for your support, because without the support of everyone in America and throughout the world, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. I would not be able to do what I had done. And so thank you for your support and the thanks that you give to us and to all the sailors and soldiers and airmen and Marines that are still active duty and still doing their thing out there.
Mm-hmm. Dana, without further ado, man, the anchor for today's interview is all about your book, Team, Training, Education, and Mentorship. Tell us a little bit more about it.
So Team is it's kind of interesting how that got started and how this book came about. It was quite interesting, and towards the end of my career, after I left the ship, I was a director of operations at one of our regional facilities, and one of the former sailors who worked for me would listen to me mentor, and I'd have different, sailors and civilians come in and talk to me about things. And one day he walked in and he goes, sir, you need to write a book. I just kind of chuckled. I was like, I don't have those kind of skills, man. That's not me. But he says, sir, I hear what you say, your lessons, your mentoring, your conversations and discussions with people. And you need to put this on paper, because obviously you're going to retire in a couple of years, and those things will be lost. And it's probably good that you put those on paper. And, jokingly, as I said, that's not my skill set at the time. And so, but after a while, I started doing that. I started jotting down a few notes here and there. And after that 2 years, I had several pages of things that I kind of put on the back burner. And so I did that. And, I retired and worked, took a job shortly after that. I worked for Fanatics as a director of engineering there. And so as I started working there, about a year into it, COVID hit. And once COVID hit, I found myself with a lot of extra time, especially on the weekends. Mm-hmm. And so I decided to dust off the paperwork that I had and go at it. And since I don't have a hobby, that became my hobby. And, my golf game wasn't really good, and so I think the book writing became a hobby. It was something that I actually enjoyed doing, and got into it. 15 to 20 hours on the weekend is what I ended up putting into it over probably about a year's worth of time, and became a passion, actually. And so from there, Team was developed. Again, training, education, and mentorship. And what I found in the notes that I had was there were things that I felt I could, again, pass back to those who either had worked for me in the past or people coming up in the future, or as you mentioned earlier, people who are out there in the workforce right now who may not have the opportunity to gain some of this knowledge that I have. I felt like I had more to offer. And so that's what I decided to do. And so I put it on paper. I put, kind of divided it up amongst those three chapters: training, education, and mentorship, and work from there.
People, again, we're here on the line with Dana R. Gordon. We're discussing his amazing book, Team, Training, Education, and Mentorship. Available for purchase through Amazon, barnesandnoble.com. But make sure to check out his personal site, authordanagordon.com, to gather everything that he has in store. Dana, a follow-up question to that, and thank you very much for all of the information that you've given so far. Listen, this next question I want to utilize as an extra incentive for our listening audience, as if they need any more. People, if you want to gather all of the helpful tips, I just mentioned it, okay? Amazon, Barnes & Noble, his personal website, there's no getting around it. You got to purchase copies for yourself. But Dana, since we have you here on the line, man, let's pick your brain a little bit more. For anybody out there listening in that is in a position where they're either working with the team, they're in a leadership position, so they need to try to mentor people and educate them, what is some advice, just scratching the surface? Again, we don't want to go into everything, but what is some advice and some helpful tips that you can offer them?
There's quite a few things in there. I've had a chance to talk to several people about the book and about things that are in there. And I've often been asked, well, what's your favorite chapter? What's your favorite quote? Because the way the book is written, I highlight each chapter with one or two quotes at the very beginning, and I based the chapter off of those quotes in terms of the lessons learned or what I'm trying to convey. And so, I think, if you're leading a group, one of the quotes that I had in one of the chapters, and this one was from Carl Lawson, the Duke women's basketball coach, and it was, you have to give what the group needs, not what you want to give. And that's probably one of my favorite ones in the training chapter. In terms of, as a leader, something that you need to be selfless and to be able to give of yourself, both as a leader, as a teammate, and as a follower. So that's one of the things that, I think one of the favorite chapters that I have, and at least one of the favorite quotes as well.
I love that. Dana, I love that. Listen, that is profound on so many levels, because I think oftentimes we view things from our particular perspective. And people, listen, you don't have to search too far to understand that is not good leadership, right? You're not leading a bunch of yous. At the end of the day, you need to read the room, recognize who you're working with, and try to adapt things through their scope, through their perspective. I love that advice. I'm telling you, that's just one. The book is filled with so much helpful pieces of information just like that. I love it. Dana, curiosity for myself here with this next one, man, what would you say was a highlight for you in writing the book? Or if not a highlight, something that surprised you that you weren't anticipating before you began?
So, I always joke, I mentioned earlier, I'm an engineering student. I was an electrical engineering guy out of Georgia Tech, and ended up being a pilot. And so if most people, the stereotypical engineer is not a big reader, an avid reader anyway. And I'm that type of guy. I read books, I do those types of things, but I'm not a deep and avid reader. But the writing thing kind of came naturally to me. Both my, I always joke that I think I'm a third generation school teacher. My grandmother, my mother, and my sister are all school teachers. And so I have this innate, I guess, whatever you want to call it, in me to be a teacher, an educator of some sort. And so I think what ended up happening is, as things progressed, and I talked about writing the book, or at least starting in the book, what I wanted to convey kind of came out naturally because of that, because of my willingness and wanting to convey things and continue teaching on paper, because I wasn't in front of someone or mentoring someone. I felt like I could convey that on paper and then push that out to others to read, which is why I wrote the book. And so that kind of started and sparked an interest. And as I said earlier, it became a hobby. And I think you would define a hobby as something that you will wake up and eat breakfast and start, and stop in the middle and eat lunch, and go back and eat dinner afterwards. And after 8 hours, you enjoy it and you get something out of it and you pick it up the next day. And that's probably the biggest surprise that I got out of it, is the drive and energy that I got out of it once I started.
Listen, we know about this fantastic narrative. We know about your past. Now I want to focus on the future. Dana, we know we have another book that you are in the process of creating. As I mentioned before, it's called Leading, Empowering, and Developing. Please give us a little bit more information about that narrative so we know what to expect.
It's along the same lines, 3 chapters, or 3 parts, I should say, divided up probably into about 8 chapters, which is what the same that Lead is. But it's along the same lines. It's quotes either from famous people or from me, or kind of interwoven into a storyline of, in this case, leading, empowering, and developing people or yourself. So, not much different from the theme that I'm doing with Team, because I wanted to kind of keep them in the same vein and the same storyline and
Right.
what I'm doing. And again, more along the lines of teaching and giving back, lessons learned. Someone can pick it up. I always tell people that it's going to be along the same lines. It's a short book. Again, the engineer and pilot in me is not going to have a lot of words, but it's going to have some pictures in it. I enjoy pictures, and I think the pilot in me likes the pictures. So we'll have pictures in there. We'll have a lot of history from the military, some of those pictures from my background in the military family, some other things that are parts of the inspiration as to why I wrote the book, and kind of help also convey the storyline in each one of the chapters. But, each chapter is a short chapter so that you can get through it and get something out of it. And I think that's what I wanted to make sure I conveyed to the reader.
There you have it. People, listen, we say this all the time through people of distinction. We are much stronger when we come together, right? When we're united. And we firmly believe in our mission statement. Like, when we talk about our human family, we mean just that, okay? I don't care what you believe in. I don't care what you look like. I don't care where you're from. At the end of the day, we are still connected, and there's much more that connects us than separates us. And I think a lot of times we focus on those differences. I think a lot of times we focus on those disconnections. And that's what leads us to the world that we have today, where, again, there is a lot of division that we are constantly seeing. I mean, that division is pretty much jammed down our throat. Now, listen, there's a rabbit hole that we can go down in terms of articulating it and really exploring that division and really what comes from it and the system behind it. It doesn't have a place in this interview. What we're talking about here is uniting. What we're talking about here is growing together as a team, right? Leading in a very efficient and impactful way. And that's why this book and soon to be books are so valuable. The information found on those pages, I'm telling you, people, it's second to none. So you know what you have to do. Okay, the title is Team, Training, Education, and Mentorship. The one set to be released is called Leading, Empowering, and Developing. Both of which will be found on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or directly through his personal site, author danagordon.com. Head on over there today and pick up your copies. This is a fantastic resource to add to your shelf, and as I mentioned before, an even better gift to add to someone else's. So you know where to go, and you can thank me later. The education starts with these books here. Dana, this has been an absolute pleasure. Such an honor. Thank you once again for being a guest on People of Distinction.
Benji, thank you so much. I appreciate the time, and look forward to talking with you again in the future once we bring the second book out.